Can the metaphor lecture?
Yes.
And you know, I mean, I totally agree with what you said in the notes and in your evaluation, in your submission to Teach Now platform. I do wish, I think overall, yeah, I mean, I think I did a good job going deep about the poem. You know, I probably maybe went too deep. You know, do they really know what quatrains are or whatever? You know, and so I have to kind of make it more student-centered and and also learn to use Blackboard, collaborate, like the polling function.
Yeah. So I just kind of wrote down what I was thinking as I was viewing the lesson. And I think it was great that you started with a student welcome and you used their specific names, which is a good example of how I'm sure you are already in the classroom and how you plan to be. And I think it's good to check audio. You know, you said, can you hear me? And another thing you could say, hey, give me a face if you can hear me, or give me a thumbs up, or, you know, just something like that.
Right.
I think that I'm starting to see what I believe is a characteristic voice and personality of you coming through that I think is dry and funny and clever. That, like, you had the black tie definition of metaphor. Oh, right. And you know, the poetry can be nice smelling or metaphor. I don't know. I just think that's a great, clever way to share a bit of your own personality. Maybe that's the Eastern European in you. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not encouraged. The dry sense of humor is the humor is it's always humor in my country came from oppression. So it was like always like, you know, jokes were always like kind of way of expressing frustration with the political situation. So it was always like a critical, I don't know if that comes from that or just because I remember a former classmate in 8th grade saying, like, we reconnected over Facebook. She mentioned how my sense of humor was sort of acidic or
yeah. Oh, those are both good. I think that's good for high school too.
But I'm also goofy. I just don't really, maybe, yeah.
Well, you can be goofy if you want when you're in there in Blackboard. But I do think that in general, the way you're coming across is definitely as a human with a specific point of view that I think your students will enjoy when they get to have you every single day, when you're in a more normal situation. And I loved on the simplified definition slide how you got the kids to participate at the end. Excuse me. And just in general, like the beauty is truth slide, when you said, does that make sense to them about, you know, what he was saying, maybe, you know, you could change it to like, type in the chat box, give an example of what you think the poet means, or what, you know, what you think the beauty of life is, or the pain of life. And then the participation on reading the poem. And I'm sure you noticed those tricky kids, they set themselves as a way as soon as they hear you or other instructors say, okay, you're going to be reading aloud now. And then after the poem was done being read aloud, they were all mysteriously not away anymore. So they all kind of hate talking. Well, most of them. I know you have one good participator. But if there are ways to get around this idea of them not wanting to read aloud, I mean, I don't know. I suppose sometimes the only thing to do is to have something read aloud, but continue to think about, you know, the ways of having them participate, like you did with that table at the end too. And I wrote, you don't patronize them.
You know, the PC.
Oh, that's good.
African American.
And how you were saying, maybe
but to me it's a mouthful. You know, when I'm trying, like, you know, in the excitement of delivery.
And I say, yes, they do need to know what a quatrain
I didn't want to trip over my tongue saying African American.
I think that you're approaching this
and
from a higher level. And that you are setting an expectation without even really spelling it out. And I mean, even if they aren't always meeting the expectation, I see them trying. And how cool! And they want to make comments, and they're stretching themselves there. And so I think that is really important idea. Not spoon feeding them. And you're saying, like, this is higher level stuff, and guess what? You're going to do it. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing.
Was like, what can I do?
I think that's very
diffuse
effective and impressive.
You know, false ideas about the
gravitas, but also the
think about the jazz era as this
underlying warmth to pull that off and to pull them into it.
They were rich, and they were
it's my
getting along with the white people like they're their friends.
Yeah, I am my worst critic.
I mean, of course,
yeah, well,
I mean, I vacillated
between it a long time ago.
You know,
but it seems like that
thinking,
kind of movie
so great,
maybe glamorizing, you know, the relationship.
Yes.
And this poem that I gave was just like saying it like it was. I mean, like, you know, it was like more real. What blues, like the majority of blues piano players were not like, you know.
But in general, I mean, I think it's
brothers or
it's patently obvious that you're experienced and comfortable. No, I think that you're right. And in terms of as an educator, it's like somehow some of the media, and it's like, oh, let's make this more palatable to a white audience. Like which audience is the Cotton Club? You have the natural created for authority already. And then I think it's cool how that linked into your encouragement that they analyze the speaker and the narrator. Instead of always assuming, of course, that the poet is being autobiographical. And, you know, I think it's so important to think about that perspective. And is the speaker white? Is the speaker black? How does that change the meaning? And I thought that was super cool. I wrote down your questions are a very high level order of thinking, and that the kids are willing to go there with you again. So I think that is, I think it's excellent.
It was hard to teach it because it is a complex poem and it has a lot of questions, you know. And I read some literary criticism. I mean, actually, that's what helped me really deliver this because it was so short notice and it was a lot of things, questions that I had about it, and I had to look for guidance.
Well, like the thing, I thought it was fascinating what you were sharing about how meaningful the name of the street was and what that meant. You know, how they were coming down from, what did you say, the lower numbers?
Lower Manhattan, from Lower Manhattan. Yeah. I know it's kind of counterintuitive that because Manhattan is lower than Harlem.
Yeah.
But this person this scholar who, you know, much more versed in this field, in this area of literature, was saying that this was implying that somebody was coming down. It was not a native of Harlem, you know, was coming down to see a black piano player down to Lenox from the white, you know, more privileged area.
You know. Yeah, I have to admit, I've read that poem before at some point in my life, but I never had heard that, and I had never made that connection, and it really gives me a totally different perspective on that poem, and I think that was really effective. And the whole time I was viewing it, I was thinking, like, man, this is a tough lesson as a teacher to present. Like, I was like, man, he's brave. But in a good way. Like I admire what you did there, and then the fact that you had, you know, practically no notice at all makes it even more impressive. And again, you had some great built-in participation. I wish you had not got cut off at the end.
Yeah, I wish I had more time. Definitely. That was one of the things that I was feeling the heat. I was like, oh man, I was like, shoot.
Yeah, but that happens too, right? You know?
What's that?
Sometimes that happens in teaching, right? Sometimes you're like,
yeah,
whoa.
of course. Yeah. You have to be able to like just make it happen, and they have, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But okay, well, before I ask this question, anything else you want to say about metaphors or?
No, not really about that.
Okay.
About that lecture. At the end, I was, yeah, I don't know. It just, I wish that it was. No, not. I think that lesson went well enough. I mean, I, I could have had more participation. Is true, and there was one student who kind of dominated the
Yeah.
But there are others who said something, I felt like at the end somebody said something like, I wish I was doing this every day, meaning that they wish they were in my class every day. So I was really flattered about that. And it was not the student who was participating all the time. So I feel like some students, even though they were not participating as fully as the other student, I think they were inspired somehow. I hope they were sincere, and so.
Oh, I think they're sincere for sure, because they have no reason to say that.
That's true. They don't have that.
They're not even face to face with you. So
that's true. Yeah, they're not adults yet.
Yeah, and I think again that just goes back to the idea that you are approaching them as intelligent, interesting people who can figure things out and who have important things to say, and so they agree with you and they try their best.
Yeah.
And sorry, Mike.
That's okay. No worries. I totally understand.
So
Look, my little ones were shouting yesterday like that.
Okay. How in general are you feeling about how things are going?
Yeah, pretty good. I think that learning how to use Zoom was a huge thing for me, because
good.
It was like, I'm not going to rely on anyone. I'm just going to rely on myself.
Yes. I think that's probably best.
Yes. So it's like, this works, and it produces a MP4 file right away, which I can then edit and then, deliver it to my instructor. So. Okay,
good. And you're not having any trouble with the instructor saying like, you're behind or you need to whatever? No, she's very understanding. Good. As long as I explain everything to her, she's really cool about it. Yeah, totally. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, or shall we? No, just saying that you're wonderful, and I'm not wonderful. Yeah, you are. You are. No, you are. Back at you. Okay, no, you are. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Emil. I hope you and your family have a great week. Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for this. Okay. Bye, Emil. Okay, bye-bye.